A lot of women with PCOS are told to eliminate carbohydrates completely, go on a keto style diet, and that is a big issue for many reasons. But the top reason is that it's highly, highly unsustainable for most people. And so if you have PCOS and you are doing something right now that you don't see yourself continuing to do in 2, 5, or 10 years from now, please don't do it, because PCOS is a lifelong condition and we want to only focus on sustainable changes that you can keep up with forever.
Hi, and welcome back to the Holistic Health and Hormones podcast. I'm your host, Eli Huang. One of the most common and misunderstood conditions I see is PCOS. Too often, women are told to just manage or suppress their symptoms or accept irregular cycles as their normal. Today's episode is about changing that narrative. In PCOS Unlocked, a holistic path to hormone balance, we're exploring how nutrition, lifestyle, and nervous system regulation can work together to restore ovulation, balance hormones, and support fertility when approached through a root cause, whole body holistic lens. I'm joined by hormonal dietitian Dafna, who specializes in PCOS, and together we'll unpack what PCOS is really communicating to us, why so many approaches fall short, and what actually helps women feel regulated, empowered, and fertile again. So if you've been diagnosed with PCOS, or are trying to conceive, or simply want to understand your hormones more deeply, then this is a conversation for you. Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to the Holistic Health and Hormones podcast. Today, I'm super excited to have Dafna Chazin with us today, who is a registered dietitian with over a decade of experience across a variety of clinical and wellness settings. And while her work has spanned many areas of nutrition, her passion has always been around women's health and hormones, shaped by her own struggles early in life. Today, Dafna helps women better understand their bodies, use nutrition and lifestyle strategies to support hormone balance and healthy cycles. And she's the creator of Period Return Plan, where she helps women regulate their cycles within 90 days. Welcome, Dafna.
Yay. Hi. Thank you so much for being here.
So tell me, you said that you had some struggles early in life. Sort of what did that look like for you? Because I'm sure many of the listeners now, they don't realize, I think early struggles, as in sort of teenage years when your menarche starts, that it's all normal. So tell me a bit about that and what we commonly see, with people presenting with really, sort of early struggles in life.
Yeah. So it's true. So early on when, I first got my period, I was very irregular and my periods were super painful. And all I heard was that it's normal and it's fine and not to worry about it. It will kind of work itself out, but it didn't. And so over time, things got really problematic for me with my periods, very painful, very heavy. I used to not go to school, when I was in high school and things like that. And all I was offered was birth control, right? I was
Yeah.
always going to the doctor saying, how bad it is. And they used to offer me birth control. And after several years of trying to kind of figure it out on my own and my mom helping me and things like that, I did go on birth control pills. And while my symptoms got better, of course, bleeding wasn't as heavy because at the time I didn't know what the bleed that I was getting was not even a real period. My periods were not as painful, but I did see a lot of other symptoms starting to emerge, like anxiety and digestive issues and other problems like that. And initially, I didn't connect the dots, but I did eventually realize, starting to research on my own, what birth control is, what it does to your body. And I decided to come off and kind of work through balancing my hormones, really improving my nutrition, managing my stress. I had a lot of things in my life that were going on at the time that, I didn't realize were even impacting me in that way. And so it took a good 10 years for me to really solve this problem. But of course, as soon as I came off the birth control, all my other issues came back. I had severe acne. I had a lot of, issues with inflammation in my body. And so working slowly but surely through lifestyle changes and nutrition, and then eventually going into nutrition school just to make sure I do it right. And I
Yeah.
really became so interested in it that I decided to pursue it as a career. But I always tell women that hormone health is a long game and it takes time. And so it doesn't have to take you 10 years, but it does take time. But it is very, very manageable and fixable with the right approach. And so, one part of what I do now is try to save women the time and mistakes that I've made and really help direct them in on the right path right away as soon as they see those struggles.
It's so true because in my area of fertility work, which is obviously all around health and hormones, like you said, 10 years is only just even a small snippet. Most people have been struggling with health, with their hormonal, sort of issues since teenage years, and they are now mostly in their even
Yeah.
late 30s, early 40s. So we're not just talking 10 years, we're talking like 2, 3 decades, right? And like you said, it's so common in this Western society. You go to your doctor, and then your painful periods, especially if it's a male doctor, sorry to be sort of, gender typing, but it is true. They don't understand what women are really going through, even these days, right? And it's like painful periods in the first, before you know it, because the teenagers doesn't want to deal with the pain. They don't realize it's a long game, like you said.
Yeah.
The parents just want to see their kids not in any pain. So once they're on birth control, they stay on it because it's easier. Then they become sexually active. And before you know it, they're coming off it in their 30s and late 30s. And that's where you see a lot of these problems creep up, especially when they come off it just when they're thinking of trying to conceive, which
Yeah.
is the wrong idea, because you really need to manage and get to the root cause of why are you getting painful periods. And sure, it could be the start of period, but start of teenage years when your hormones are just obviously shifting, but giving that a little bit of time. However, if that is still an issue 5 years later, then really getting to the root cause and understanding diet, lifestyle, nutrition, like you said. But that's not the model of care in this day.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it goes back to education. Nobody ever tells you,
Mm.
what is this pill? What is it doing to your body? How is it impacting your hormones? Why is it that I take this pill and yes, some of my pain is gone, but I do see this other problem pop up? So, the whole system is set up on just kind of like writing the script and sending you off, right? And then not really fully having the body literacy to understand what's going on. And part of it, I think, starts in education, in school. We should be talking about
Right?
periods. We should be talking about
Yeah.
all of those things. And, my kids are in health class now, they're teenagers. And, they talk about vaping and alcohol and all of those things. And those are, of course, important. But let's put into this conversation, period health and
Oh,
hormones
man.
and all of those things that girls need to know about so they can make educated decisions about their own body later on and not have to kind of, resolve to just this one solution that's being pushed over and over and over again.
I totally agree. And I think you're exactly right. I was saying to someone, I wish this would be more rolled out into schools. Like they talk about sex ed. However, the whole hormonal health is so important because it should be talked about, even in year 6 or when they're sort of 12 years old, just before teenage. I mean, look, even now periods are starting as young as 8, which is kind of
Yes.
scary because
Yes.
yes, reproductive health and hormonal health is the long game. It literally is from when you start your periods, right? Could be early teens or, even as young as 10, all the way to even post-menopause. Some people are suffering with menopause for 10 years. And what you
Yeah.
do with diet, lifestyle, nutrition will affect your teenage years, how your periods are, to all the way through your 20s, then in preconception care, which essentially for me starts 5 years, I would say minimum of 2 to 5 years before you're wanting to even conceive, then throughout pregnancy, and after that into menopause and postmenopause. So it is a long game and it starts with education. You're so right. And I think that most people are not well educated. Even with the internet these days, we're still not doing what we should be. It's just becomes comfort. People are like, oh, yeah, I'll worry about it later. I think that's the
Right.
mentality. It's like, I'll vape now, I'm young and I'll be fine. But now we're seeing that vaping, even all the diet, nutrition, everything, it starts as young as what you were doing from teenage 20s as to the sort of side effects that you're going through now. It's all from that last sort of 5 to 10 years of
Yeah.
how you're
Yeah.
treating your body.
And I think for me also, because I work primarily with women with PCOS, where so many symptoms come up and it's such a difficult condition to manage, women just become complacent and accept the fact that this is just my life. This is just how it is, right? I don't get a period, or I get periods, but they last 3, 4 weeks of bleeding, or things like that that are totally not normal but are
Yeah.
common. So I always tell people,
Very, yeah.
just because something is common doesn't mean it's normal, right? And so it's hard to, want to make a change because you may get used to something, but that doesn't mean you have to live that way forever. And so,
Yeah. And like you said, if you don't deal with things early on, this is when they start struggling, is when they're about to have a baby and they realize, oh my gosh, it's been 2, 3 years, 5 years, sometimes 10, who have been struggling to conceive. Whereas, a lot of people say, I wish, I learned all this stuff like 10, 20 years ago, because
yeah,
now time is of the essence. Whereas when
right.
you're a teenager and you're in your 20s, you've got that time. But when you're in your late 30s and early 40s,
It
you don't
becomes a
have much
rush.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And PCOS, let's talk about PCOS, but that can take sometimes, a good 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, even a good year, because it depends on people's baselines, what's happened.
Yeah.
So let's talk to the listeners who are possibly new to PCOS or don't fully understand. Can you explain what polycystic ovarian syndrome or PCOS really is beyond just irregular cycles and maybe high
Yes.
testosterone and acne? Mm.
Yeah, so these are the things people know PCOS for the most, probably, but it's actually a condition that affects the whole body. And so it is the leading cause of infertility, but it affects your metabolic health. Your risk of certain conditions like diabetes and heart disease goes way up. It even impacts your mental health. And so 30 to 40% of women
Mm.
with PCOS struggle with anxiety and depression. And so, really, the hormonal imbalances that are part of PCOS can impact every single system of the body. And it's really important to understand, I think, here how PCOS is diagnosed, because there are a lot of things that are misleading here. And so we don't diagnose PCOS by how someone looks or what their weight is or anything like that. The most commonly used criteria for diagnosing PCOS is called the Rotterdam criteria. And it says that a woman needs to have two of the following three things in order to be diagnosed with PCOS. The first one is cycles that are longer than 35 days. And that means from the first day of your period to the next first day of your period, to be more than 35 days. A woman needs to have high androgen levels, so high levels of male hormones like testosterone, or symptoms of that, like acne, facial hair, hair loss. And then the third one is cysts upon ultrasound, ovarian cysts. And
Mm.
so those are not exactly ovarian cysts, those are immature follicles, but a lot of times people will be told that they have ovarian cysts. So you need to have two of those three things to be officially diagnosed with PCOS. Really, not none of the other signs or symptoms are used for diagnostic criteria, but it is often misdiagnosed or it is underdiagnosed as well.
Yeah, so even that, and just making sure that they can read, or the doctors explain to them their blood testing, like I said, sort of that cycle day 2 testing, making sure your
Mhm.
LH FSH ratio, and then having, if you have those symptoms, to really speak to your doctor. And if not, there are so many people that are sort of more natural, holistic, because a lot of doctors will then just go, well, if you're young, let's just put you on a contraceptive to regulate your periods. But again,
Mhm.
that doesn't treat the root cause. So why do you think that PCOS is still so misunderstood and often treated as a one size fits all? As soon as you go to a doctor, it's like, look, just put you on the if you're not looking to conceive in the next little while, put you on the contraceptive, right?
Yeah, I think it's because of what you said, that the root cause is not being considered. And so when someone gets the diagnosis of PCOS, they're immediately sent off with either weight loss, a prescription for weight
Yeah.
loss, or a prescription
Yeah.
for birth control, or both. And so it's really important to understand that two women can have the same diagnosis of PCOS, but manifest completely differently, right? Have different symptoms, different issues, and different drivers and root causes hormonally. And so there are really two different genetic types of PCOS that we see the most. And again, they both fall under the PCOS umbrella, but they're very different. One of them is the reproductive type, where women have high LH levels. They will have a normal BMI typically and no issues with insulin resistance. And then we have the metabolic type. So that, type is more manifesting with inflammation, insulin resistance, and higher BMI typically. And so again, two very different types of PCOS. Probably both of these women will get the same type of treatment, even though the drivers, the hormones, and the underlying causes of their issues are way different. And so in the long run, those things are not going to work because neither birth control nor weight loss will fix the root problem. And so a lot of times women spend, years trying to kind of cover up the symptoms, not really treating the source, and that could become a problem.
I mean, even now with those who are the metabolic type, the overweight type, they're just basically put on GLP-1s now, look, and just told lose some weight, right? And it is an insulin problem, but we still need to come back, like you said, to really looking at diet, lifestyle, and why there is that metabolic condition and how to best manage that. Because yes, being on the GLP-1s, which is an entire different conversation itself, does have its own side effects, but it's not really looking at, okay, how do we manage this person's, constitution and look at why, they're putting on weight and not able to shift. And sometimes the GLP-1s may work for a little while and then the weight comes back, but it's still not treating. A lot of it is mental, emotional, even coming back to that because, we often talk about sort of in functional medicine work in Chinese medicine that stress and cortisol are disrupting the ovulation. So sometimes even having a speak to your doctor about what is causing that stress, what is causing that cortisol, which we know disrupts the nervous system dysregulation and showing up as PCOS. So, let's
a
talk
lot
a
of
bit
times,
about
when women with PCOS have an issue with weight, a lot of times that is a symptom, right? All the time. That is a symptom. That is not the problem. And so a lot of times when women go to the doctor would kind of frame the weight as the main cause, as the problem that needs to be solved so that everything else falls into place. And that is completely backwards because, like you said, if someone has insulin resistance, if they have inflammation, if their cortisol is high, which we all know, and, promotes deposition of fat in the abdomen and things like that, the weight is just one more symptom that there is a bigger problem going on. And so this is why we can't really focus on weight. Not to mention there are many women with PCOS who are lean and have
very thin, very
right,
thin.
no excess weight. And so that just kind of shines a light on the fact that weight loss is not how we want to go about it. We really want to address either the insulin, the inflammation, the cortisol, the high androgen levels, all of those things that are kind of brewing under the surface and then manifesting in these different ways.
So let's talk about nutrition. And I guess what are the biggest nutrition myths when it comes to PCOS?
Okay, I love this question because there are so many.
Yeah.
I would say, so we just talked about one of them, that weight loss is kind of the end all be all of solving these PCOS problems. That's obviously not true. A lot of women with PCOS are told to eliminate carbohydrates completely, go on a keto style diet. And that is a big issue for many reasons, but the top reason is that it's highly, highly unsustainable for most people. And so if you have PCOS and you are doing something right now that you don't see yourself continuing to do in 2, 5, or 10 years from now, please don't do it because PCOS is a lifelong condition and we want to only focus on sustainable changes that you can keep up with forever. Okay. And so when I hear things like this, don't ever eat sugar, cut out gluten, don't eat carbs. These are things that may work a little bit initially, but if you're not able to continue doing them and really make a lifestyle out of it, there is no point, right? And so I would say the elimination, the restriction, whenever you hear things like that, those are typically strict solutions that I would stay away from. And they're not even helpful in the long run. So we know that your body needs carbohydrates, right? And it needs fiber. It needs all of those nutrients in a balanced way throughout the day. We don't want to eliminate any one food group because nutritionally, your hormones are going to need that. And so I would say that is one of the biggest myths that I, always see women feel confused about because it is a constant message that they're being bombarded with. And so, it comes really back to it's not as sexy or as exciting, but moderation and really having all of those foods in a balanced way in your day.
And like you were saying, like it is a long-term thing because we can't stick to short-term diets. We know that these sort of quick fixes don't work. It's about really addressing the constitution. And if you've got that sort of weakness there, that sort of root issue, it is something that needs to be managed for the long term. So having a diet which is manageable but you can stick to long term is definitely the way to go. So rather than focusing on restriction, what should women with PCOS really be prioritizing in their diet? What sort of things should they be eating?
Yeah. So it would really depend on what the root causes are, and everyone's a little bit different. But I would say that 90% of women with PCOS do struggle with some degree of insulin resistance and or inflammation. And for those situations, we first start with really good solid habits in your day, meaning not skipping meals, having a breakfast, within 90 minutes of waking up. Studies show that that can really improve insulin resistance later in the day. We want to make sure that they are eating in a way that is aligned with their circadian rhythm. That's your biological clock. Okay. And so there's a lot of research behind the time of meals, the spacing of meal, the frequency of meals. So we want to make sure that, first of all, people have an eating routine that is hormone friendly. And that includes all of the things that I just said. The other thing is that we want to focus on protein and fiber in every single meal. And so that means we're including the source of protein should be lean. We want to include a variety of vegetables. We want to make sure we're eating whole grains and foods that are high in fiber. And again, the way we portion them, the way we pair those foods together is going to matter. But pretty much every single one of your meals should have all of those components. And of course, healthy fats. We used to be so scared of fats.
Yeah.
Back in the 80s and even 90s. And now we know fats are great for you and we want to include them. They're the building blocks of hormones. And so all of this has to come together in a specific way. And that's going to depend on each woman's individual hormones and blood work and all of the other things that we look at to make sure we're addressing what's causing the problem. But I like to focus on what to eat more of and how to make sure that you're as inclusive and flexible with your diet and really forget about restriction. There's no food that should be off limits.
Yeah, it's more also the anti-inflammatory diet, like you said, which does
Mm-hmm.
include a lot of those healthy fats, right?
Mm-hmm.
The main thing is we know all the processed foods, all the junk foods, all that sugar, which is just, obviously that's just that's a given. But we're most of the time we aren't including the protein, fiber. And what you mentioned was really interesting was that to have to have that breakfast, within that sort of hour and a half, because some of these that want to lose weight, I've had clients come to me who've basically only having that one meal a day. They're just doing whatever they can to lose that weight. And actually then it
Yeah.
starves their body. And then when they're only eating that one meal, they're storing that all. So, all of that is so important that they're having this routine and maintaining, this for
Yeah.
basically a long time.
Your hormones really thrive on routine. And so we want to make sure we're putting your body into some sort of a rhythm where your biological clock is working properly. And that's not just for sleep and awake, that's for everything, right? Your biological clock, your circadian rhythm is a center in your brain that dictates everything: your weight, your mood, your thyroid function, yes, your sleep and awake cycles, your menstrual cycle. So a lot of things are dependent upon that. And we want to make sure that we're eating in alignment with how your body is designed to work. You mentioned fasting. I just want to say here that when women with PCOS do some of these more extreme things like fasting, it can completely throw their hormones off. So with PCOS, hormones are so sensitive to begin with for anything that can put stress on the body. And a lot of times when women eat one meal a day, or they fast for 16 hours, or they don't eat until 2 or 3 p.m. and then they eat into the night, all of these things can throw the system completely off because your body perceives that as a stressor. And it's going to go into fight or flight, and it's going to stay in that inflammatory state. And that is just a very vicious cycle for your hormones. And so, women do this at no fault of their own. This is what we see, this is what we hear. And maybe some people are feeling like that would be good for them. But be very careful with extreme things like this when you have a hormonal condition because your hormones are so very sensitive.
Yeah, and that will affect their nervous system. And then
Mhm.
that could definitely bring on more chronic stress, which we know stress then will impact ovulation, which then will drive that sort of longer cycles.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
let's talk about exercise and sleep. Let's because they are so important, yet it is so often overlooked. And I know most people do not have good sleep routines, right?
Yes.
They're up all night or, they're on screens. And how is sleep impacting really your hormones and your stress levels, insulin, all of that? It's all connected.
Yeah. So if we were to look at a pyramid of what works for PCOS and what's important, sleep would probably be at the foundation, right? It is the foundation of all health in general, but hormone health in
Mm.
particular. And so when someone doesn't sleep well, it really doesn't matter how well they eat, how much they exercise. Sleep is going to disrupt your hormonal patterns and it's going to increase cortisol levels. It makes insulin resistance worse. So, when you don't sleep well, your body cannot use up sugar properly. It makes you more insulin resistant and it's also going to increase inflammation. And so, if you have sleep issues, if you're not getting 7 to 9 hours of good quality sleep every night, and you're someone who maybe is a shift worker or things like that, which can make it very hard,
Yeah.
sleep should be the number one priority. Getting, even if you can't get that amount of sleep, getting good quality sleep, having good sleep hygiene, which means what you do before you go to bed, how you set up your space. Are you on your screens? Are you, doing things before that are increasing anxiety? Like all of these things need to be considered so that your quality of sleep can improve because if your body is inflamed, if your stress levels are high, your cortisol is high, your body is not going to feel safe enough to ovulate. And it's going to, delay and delay because those are not optimal conditions for conception. And so we want to make sure that we're setting you up, especially if you're looking to regulate your cycle with the best, healthiest environment in your body. And sleep is the foundation of that.
And we normally see with people who aren't sleeping well, they are stressed. And so it becomes this very vicious cycle. Then they're drinking more coffee than needed, they're
Yes.
having more sugar just to get
Yes.
that energy up. So I was like, look, always track your sleep. Actually, no, because people think, oh, I'm getting 7 to 9 hours, but they're still waking up tired. They're not going to bed at the right time. Because I always talk about, that circadian rhythm in Chinese medicine, that 11 p.m. to 1 a.m., right, is your gallbladder time. Then you got that 1 to 3 a.m., which is your liver, which is where all that detoxification is happening, where your body is actually really regulating those hormones through the liver. Your brain is doing all that brain dumping. If you're not getting that solid sleep, if like around 11 already, sort of 11:30 at the latest, right, and having that solid 4 hours sleep at the beginning, that's where you're going to feel really, really tired. Most people are going to bed at like 1, 2 a.m., and especially the shift workers. But tracking your sleep and doing what you can to improve sleep to get through those sort of crucial times when your body needs to be well rested in that deep sleep cycle. So I find that with smartwatches, a tip is just like to check and see how much of deep sleep you're getting in a night.
Mm.
You're only getting like, a few percent where we should be aiming for 20 to 25% deep sleep. But most people are not getting that.
Yeah, yeah. There was a study that I read recently. It said that when people don't sleep well, the quality is poor, the number of hours is not enough. Their ghrelin, which is a hunger hormone, goes up the next day.
What?
And then the leptin, which is a hormone that signals when you're full, goes down. And
Mm.
so that means you're hungrier and you can't feel when you're getting full. And so that explains why a lot of times after you have a poor night's sleep, you're craving more sugar, like you said, you're hungrier, you don't feel satisfied, just constantly trying to get energy from food to sustain yourself. And that's just a biological response of the body. And so,
Yeah.
a lot of times, no matter how much willpower you have, you can't work against biology. And so we need to get that sleep.
And I think, look, sleep is a cornerstone to really good health. Like my family are great sleepers. My grandmother lived to like 96. She could my mom's the same, head on the pillow and she'll be like out for 8 hours till the next
Lucky. Yeah.
morning, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they're all the same on my mum's side. I've probably got my dad's side. We're not as great sleepers, but we still do our best to improve all the sleep hygiene. But yes, there are some people that can. And that means that they're never sick. They're always healthy because they wake up so refreshed and they're
Yeah, the
not
immune
needing
system
all
is
the
strong.
junk.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Your body. And when you have a good night's sleep or you're constantly a good sleeper, you just wake up and you have all the energy to exercise. And that's the thing, right? If you've got no energy because you're sleeping, and you're eating
Yeah.
poorly and then you're putting on the weight, how are you even going to
Right.
have the energy to go and exercise, which is so important for hormone balance, especially in PCOS?
Yeah, in PCOS, we see a lot of women who are tired and wired. And that's a hallmark sign of inflammation where you're super tired, you get in bed and you cannot fall asleep. And yeah, and that can be really difficult. And so, if anyone listening is struggling with this, there are a lot of different strategies that you can implement to have good sleep hygiene, set yourself up, probably something also in your habits throughout the day, whether that's caffeine or screen time or not getting enough natural light can also disrupt your circadian rhythm is impacting what's happening at night. Some people, don't make the connection. And so it really starts as soon as you wake up and having those habits built into your day.
Yeah, it all comes down to, I said, it's all rhythm. It's also going to sleep at the same time every night, doing
Hmm.
your best to wake up at the same time. And yes, getting that morning sunlight is so important, right? So for shift workers, it really throws them out. And that's where a lot
Yes.
of them I'm seeing is a lot of the PCOS clients and a lot of the infertility clients are because of shift working.
Yes.
It
It's
really
hard.
does affect, yeah, it is really, really hard. So I guess really with women and PCOS and ovulating naturally, can they, I've seen that women with PCOS ovulate naturally. Some of them are also, let's talk about anovulatory cycles as well, right? Because you may be getting a period, but you may not even be ovulating in that cycle.
Yeah, yeah, that can happen. And oftentimes, when there's breakthrough bleeding or they see random bleeding throughout the different months and years, that typically means the cycle is anovulatory, meaning ovulation did not occur, but the uterine lining did shed. And that can happen sometimes because it built up too much and then, it just shed, or there's a drop in estrogen. And then, so it can happen. Typically, when women go 60 days or more without a period and then they'll get bleeding, it's likely anovulatory, but not
Yeah,
always, but
no. So
typically, yeah.
anyway, so let's bring up that people can have a cycle which they may or not have ovulated, right? Because they could be testing with strips or getting blood work, and then it wasn't and that can be
Yeah.
seen in PCOS. So if that's the case, make sure you're checking, especially if you're trying to conceive, that you are actually ovulating
Yeah. Can
with
I
each
say something
cycle.
about the test
Yeah.
strips? Yeah. So typically in PCOS, LH levels are going to be high. And so if you're
Yes.
testing using one of those ovulation prediction kits where you pee on a little stick, those test for your LH surge right before ovulation. And in
Yeah.
PCOS, you can get a lot of false positives with that because LH is high all the time. And so that typically is not the best way to track ovulation. It works for some women, but not everyone. It could be very confusing and very frustrating because if you think you're ovulating and then you're not able to get pregnant, that obviously can drive you nuts. And so we want to make sure that we're using other methods to track ovulation, like using your basal body temperature, looking at cervical mucus, and things like that, as opposed to using the ovulation prediction kits, which can be hit or miss for some women with PCOS.
Yeah, I'm always not a fan of the sort of OPK test because yes, for women who do have that sort of high LH, also, by the time the LH surge has happened, the best time actually for conception is to actually
Right.
have sex the day
Before,
or
yeah.
24 hours before, which people don't understand. And I always think you can also get much more better information when you are tracking your BBT because if you don't have much of a rise or your progesterone is very low and the whole month, your baseline
Right.
is low, right? That's not indicative of really what is happening if you just do the OPK. You can really get so much more information if you are able to see the whole month's picture,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right? And we're not saying you have to track forever, but at least a couple of cycles to go, okay, I'm getting an idea. Oh, look, I'm not ovulating, obviously here, my temperature. And you do see much more and you understand your body much more,
Yes.
right? When you are seeing the full pictures. Oh, I'm just testing. And then it drives you mad if you got a long cycle and you're testing those test strips for a
Yes.
good month, right? It's not just
Yeah.
money, but it's the stress and it's at the same time every day and whatnot. So
Yeah, I have clients who have a 40, 45, even 50-day cycle and they know when they're ovulating. They use the thermometer for 3 or 4 months to kind of understand their average, and then they don't have to do it anymore. They just know. And even though that's not the ideal cycle length, at least they're ovulating regularly. They know their cycle is a little bit longer. They know their fertile window. And so,
Mm.
but it does take some practice in making sure that you understand, like you said, the full cycle picture and how your body behaves throughout that whole time.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about, I guess, some sort of supporting evidence around sort of do you work with specifically diet and nutrition? Do you also add in any key supplements? Because I know I love some of the sort of key supplements that you commonly use to support PCOS. What are some of your favorite sort of supplements? Obviously, it's more individualized, so speak to someone. But however, there are some common things that I find are very helpful, like you said, for the cortisol, for the inflammation,
Mhm.
and stress. Mm.
So one of my favorite supplements that's really well researched for PCOS is inositol.
Yeah.
Inositol helps with insulin resistance, it helps with ovulation, it helps with cravings, weight management, and it is a type of B vitamin that is found to be lower in women with PCOS, and it can really, really help. Easy to take. It comes in capsule or powder form. And I have almost all of my clients taking it. It has very little, if any, side effects. And so it's very well studied, well tolerated, and highly, highly effective. So that's something that I think pretty much every woman with PCOS can take, and it's safe during pregnancy as well.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you recommend inositol?
Yes, I do. I love inositol for clients that need it. If they don't have PCOS, it's generally sometimes now some really good prenatals have a
Hmm.
little sort of standard amount in there because it is so good for regulating the hormones and the
Yeah.
sugar, which is not just in PCOS. A lot of people might have certain just insulin spikes, which aren't PCOS,
Yeah.
but we aren't eating well. And so most people are sort of craving a lot of sugar, and we know that long term that can have an effect. So, yeah,
Yeah.
so inositol is so good. I definitely recommend that for PCOS clients. And like I said, look, you might go to the doctors and they might put you on metformin, letrozole, and all of that to regulate your hormones and get you ovulating and that. That is, I find can be used for some clients will use it for 3 to 6 cycles and then they find it doesn't really work. Nothing's happened, right? So like I said, it's really going back and just really implementing these sort of diet, nutritional, lifestyle, sort of
Yeah.
tips and making sure this is a long-term effect, right? It's going to
Yeah.
take as long as it takes because we've basically had such irregular hormones for so long. It's not going to be, 1 or 2 months to regulate this and get them into consistent. Once you are consistent at night at 28 to 30-day cycles, it's then maintaining
Mhm.
that regularity.
I also like magnesium. We spoke about sleep. Magnesium can be really
Yeah.
helpful for sleep, for just general relaxation. Magnesium glycinate specifically. There are a lot of different forms of magnesium. It can also be helpful in blood sugar regulation for people who need that. So that's oftentimes a great supplement to add. And then omega 3. So fish
Yeah.
oil. Yeah, sometimes women who struggle with inflammation and many people don't eat enough fish in their diet. And that is an essential nutrient that we want to get from a supplement. If we're not eating fish at least 2 to 3 times per week, I definitely recommend adding a good quality omega 3 supplement.
Very good tip there. Yes. Dafna, most people who are on omega-3 are not on a sort of good quality one. And if that's one
Yeah.
thing that you need to spend a bit more money on, I would definitely recommend a very good quality omega-3, something that is pure, that's been
Mhm.
tested, has low heavy metals, especially if you are regulating cycles to conceive. We want to make sure we are minimizing any sort of heavy metals, toxins, and getting high quality fish oil. A lot of them, I would say 99% of them are not high quality because they run rancid and it's the way that sort of manufacture and encapsulate it. So if
Yeah.
that is one thing that we need to do, because our egg health is basically essential fats, like,
Mhm.
big portion of egg quality as well as sperm quality is, essential fatty acids. So, omega-3 is the one supplement I am obsessed with that everyone takes, not only for hormone health, but inflammation,
Mhm.
long-term brain health, eye health, heart health. Like it does so many amazing things that, is good for just longevity and just health in general.
Yeah, and typically what I tell people to look for is supplements that are third party tested. And that way you can rest assured that what they say is on the label is really in there, because anyone can put anything in a
That's
bottle and
it.
call it. Yeah. So supplements are not regulated. And certainly here in the US where I am, it's a free for all. I mean, anyone can put out a supplement. And so we want something that's third party tested, and we want to make sure that there is some sort of seal of approval on. And typically I generally don't believe in this, but like you said, with supplements, price does matter. And typically, it is an indicator of quality in many cases. And so we do want to spend a little bit more here, just so we're not taking in anything that's not good for us, or even peeing out everything that we're taking without getting any of the benefit, which can definitely happen.
Yeah, for sure. So yes, I definitely recommend omega-3. There's one other thing is that you can also check your levels of inflammation, how much omega-3 is in your system. So, getting an omega-3 test kit. I'll put a link in the chats. But yes, definitely having a look at your omega-3 levels. That can
Mm-hmm.
be an indication of how much inflammation is actually in your body. And a lot of these are just, you can order them online. So making sure you know what your omega-3 levels are. Is really important as well for inflammation. So, look, what would you say to women basically who feel broken and are defeated by their PCOS diagnosis? They look like they've supposedly tried everything and their cycles are still super irregular. What would you say to those that sort of feel defeated and that they've been on this journey for such a long time and, they can't see the light at the end of the tunnel because it's just been, especially if they are on that conception site, that conception time frame and they're feeling like, oh my gosh, they're still having very irregular cycles.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, it can feel like that, but what I would say is you're not broken. It's not your fault. There is definitely a path forward where learn how to support your body, how to understand your hormones, how to nourish your body, because food is the number one way to manage PCOS and increase your chances of conceiving. And so really lean into that, not with diets, not with anything strict, but the basics of eating high protein, including more vegetables, moving your body, taking the right supplements. And I promise you, things will work out. It could take a few months, but I have many, many clients who were told they will never get pregnant and are now holding a delicious, squishy baby that they love. And so,
Yeah.
there is definitely hope, and don't give up. This is something that is absolutely manageable.
Yeah, definitely. It takes a bit of time and a bit of commitment, but and some healthy changes and sacrifices, right? We need to sometimes do things we're not comfortable with. But when you see shifts and changes, right, and people start feeling better, they want to stay on that path long term.
Yeah, it's not easy, but this is why I always say that doing it alone is very, very difficult. It's 100 times more difficult than having someone guide you and support
Yeah.
you and provide you with feedback and advice, so find someone that you trust that can really hold your hand through this process. And, that way you're not only going to get the support that you need, but you'll have accountability, which a lot of people, when you're changing your habits, it can be very difficult to stay motivated and accountable. And so this is something that's worth asking for help for.
Amazing. I think that's sort of that message that every woman with PCOS needs to hear, because I think that is so important when you can have that support. So we're going to pop Dafna's info down, in the notes. But yes, I think that support is so important. Whether it is a hormone, you're frustrated with pain and your periods aren't regular, all of that. And even with those, it's become such a long journey because the hormones can take over your life, whether you're on that conception journey or not, whether it's that pain every month, that irregularity, just all the symptoms, the acne, all of that comes with it. It's really debilitating, especially if people have been suffering for a long time and the standard conventional model is just not working. And you just don't have someone that has that individualized look over and just to really guide you. Because again, it's not that one size fits all. Like I
Right.
said, it's really having someone be there in your corner to follow you and hold you accountable you're going to get the best results that way.
Absolutely.
So just in closing, Dafna, because we could be talking for a long time on this, it's such a big topic, but if someone listening today with PCOS could just take, away one aligned, gentle step to get started, what would you recommend?
I would say that taking the holistic approach is something that sometimes people need to get used to, because we are used to quick fixes. And so I would say make the mindset shift. This is going to take me a little while, but I will make changes that are sustainable, things that I actually enjoy doing, I can see myself doing long term. And that is going to help you stay in the game and not burn out after a month or 2 months of crash dieting. And so that is probably my biggest message to people is find something that is doable for you, that you get excited about doing and taking care of your body in a balanced, kind of, logical way that doesn't feel too crazy or too extreme. And I think that's something that can take you pretty far. And again, get that support. Make sure that, even if it's online in some, forums or groups, there are millions of women who are suffering from PCOS. It could feel very isolating. You may not know someone in your family or friend group that has it, but millions of women have it. And so get into some of those groups. I wouldn't say read every post or take advice from from people in the
Yeah.
group, but at least you can feel that sense of connection and understanding and that someone gets you. I think mentally that could be very helpful as well.
Amazing, Dafna. Thank you so much for your insights today. And if people want to connect with you, we're going to pop your website or your links so they can get in touch with you if they want to have a chat. Thank you so much
Great.
for being on.
Thank
You've
you.
really given the listeners some amazing tips to take away with. And hopefully, if anyone, is going through that, please reach out. You're not alone and there is always support. So thanks again for listening.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you for tuning in to the Holistic Health and Hormones podcast. If there's one thing to remember from today, it's this, that PCOS is not a life sentence, it's feedback. When we address the root cause, nourish the body, and support hormone balance holistically, real change is possible. So if this conversation resonated with you and you'd like personalized support on your fertility journey and your hormones, please connect with me on social media or links in the show notes. Until next time, look after your health and hormones, and I'll see you in the next episode.